Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrived by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 153, we sit down with Beth Doyle, the new superintendent of Greenport Union Free School District. Beth's path into education is anything but traditional. She began her career in finance at Citigroup and Chase before a single subway ad inspired her to leave Wall Street for the classroom. From those early teaching days in Springfield Gardens to her work as principal and district leader, each step has shaped her vision of what schools can and should be. Now in Greenport, Beth is listening closely to students, families, and teachers while bringing both financial expertise and a deep belief in education's power to strengthen communities. In our conversation, we'll talk about her journey, what drew her here, and the hopes that guide her as she looks ahead. So I hope you enjoy episode 153 with Beth Doyle. This episode was recorded August 18th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. It's really a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. And so in the beginning, I'd like to just start off if you can tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what your early life was like.
I never know how to answer that question because I did move around a bit. So mainly Long Island in Nassau County. Mm-hmm. I attended elementary school in Bethpage until second grade. Then we moved. My parents got divorced. And I went to a couple different schools in the Wantagh School District. And then moved up to Orange County, New York to Monroe. And I was there from 5th grade to 8th grade. And then ended up coming back to Bethpage, where I graduated high school. Growing up, we definitely had some significant financial hardships. There were times when we were living on food stamps and relying on government assistance and often navigating an unstable life. Mm-hmm. So at each new school that I went to, I really was, in reflecting back, looking for some sense of belonging. But it was challenging. Mm-hmm. We couldn't really afford like the trendy clothes and sneakers, things that mattered to kids, that social currency of when you're a kid. Mm-hmm. But I still found ways to adapt, typically by becoming the class clown or the social butterfly. And that was really just kind of hiding my insecurities through humor and toughness. We just talked earlier, we both attended Catholic school for a little bit, and yes, that was a bit of a reprieve for me because you got to wear uniforms. Mm-hmm. So you kind of were able to blend in without standing out for not having the cool stuff. But there was always friends, parents that kind of took mercy on me and helped fill in the gaps in my life. And that experience really shaped who I am today and my outlook on education and how students should feel in school. And regardless of their circumstance, try to build a community where all kids feel a sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And going through elementary school or middle school or high school, were you interested in certain subject matters, or coming out of high school, even what you wanted to do at that time?
Definitely literacy. I really loved books. It was an escape for me. I remember joining the local library's summer reading program, and just the this idea of filling out the tracking sheet of all the books that you read. And I'd never experienced something like that before. It was kind of like my first opportunity to goal set. And filling up that page felt like such an accomplishment. And I don't even remember what the reward was. It was probably like a sticker or a small token, but it really was the first time that I can remember feeling a sense of accomplishment. And I enjoyed that. And I recognize now that as an adult, that's what brings me joy and happiness, is feeling like I have achieved my goals. And part of that is learning. So I really love learning. May not have known that about me if you were someone looking in at me at high school, because I was kind of lost. I didn't know my friend groups changed every year. And, one year I was with, the popular kids, and the next year I was with, the kids that wear all, I had like concert t-shirts and I don't know. Then I was like preppy one year, just trying to, like most kids, just trying to find my way. And I was an okay student, but I did not work hard. I was more interested in being social. Didn't really have a lot of direction at home, not blaming anybody. My parents were just trying to do their best. I was living with my father and my grandmother at the time in high school. But books were always a way for me to escape from what was going on at home, escape from my troubles. The earliest books I remember really resonating with are the Laura Ingalls Wilder collection. That really was just a way to forget about my troubles for a while, and I've carried that with me through my life as an adult, and became very interested in literacy instruction as a result of that. I actually started my PhD in literacy and put it on hold when my daughter was only 3 years old, but someday I'll go back to that. So I really do have a love of books and of teaching kids to read, and more importantly, developing a love of reading, because I know that is a pathway to success for all content areas. If you're a strong reader, you'll be successful in any other subject.
Yes. And before, we might be jumping a bit, but just before getting into your career in education, you worked in finance. What led you into that world? And what did you take from those years at Citigroup or Chase?
So as I mentioned, I was kind of lost in high school, and I don't always admit this, but I never took the SAT. So that kind of precludes you from going to college. And I don't know what I was doing. All my friends were studying for the SAT. They were applying to colleges. And again, I had zero direction. And I remember when my best friend left to go to college, and it was August, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? So luckily, I lived near SUNY Farmingdale, and I went there and stood on a long line the day before school was starting and registered. And I was an undeclared major, so I really didn't know what I was going to do. My father worked in finance. So after a semester, you had to declare a major. So I declared business administration as my major. And I really did a 180 in college. I mean, partly I think it's because I was paying for it myself, but pretty much a 4.0 student, except for I think one class. And ended up getting an academic scholarship to Hofstra University, where I majored in international business. So my dad being in that world, I think, and me really having no idea what I wanted to do at that time, that's why I took that path. And I do remember having a conversation with my father that I'd like to be a teacher. And when you don't come from a lot of means, money is a driving factor. And he said to me, teachers don't really make a lot of money. You might want to consider something else. So that's why I went in that direction. And it served me well. While going to Hofstra, I worked at a bank in Garden City, New York, First Federal Savings that no longer exists. I started as a teller, And then I worked my way up to the one person at the desk that does loans and mortgages and stuff like that while I was still in college. And I remember one day one of my customers who used to come in to get quarters to do his laundry, he worked for Chase Manhattan Private Bank in New York City. And he said, "What are you doing when you graduate?" And I was like, "I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet. I definitely want to stay in this field." And he said, "Give me your resume." And I did. And next thing I knew, I had an interview for a position in the Chase Private Bank. And I got the job and kind of took off from there. I was at Chase, I think, for maybe 2 years. Then I transferred to the Citi Private Bank. And it was a great experience. I did well. I moved up quickly. By the time I was 28, I was a vice president. I moved out to the West Coast and I was running their office in LA. I did a needs assessment there on whether or not we needed to keep the office open, and we decided to close that portion of the office, so I came back to New York. Mm-hmm. So I was really motivated by, one, just learning a whole world that I knew nothing about, and of course the titles and the prestige. We had very wealthy clients, some well-known clients, and of course the money. Mm-hmm. But once I got to that VP level, I sort of lost interest in it. My colleagues were all reading the journal, and I was like, I don't really care about the stock market. And that's not good if you're working in that world. Mm-hmm. So I started on this path to figure out what I wanted to do. And my father passed away in 2001, and I kind of felt like that gave me a license to explore a different career, because I feel like I was just doing that to please him and to make him proud of me, which is not a bad thing. But I got to a point where I'm like, what is it that I really want? Mm-hmm. Not that what my father wants. And I remember my brother is a teacher. He's a special education teacher in the New York City Department of Education, actually phys ed. And he works with severely disabled kids. He's amazing. And my best friend was a teacher at the United Nations International School in New York City. And they both really liked their jobs. And I didn't really have that. I didn't hate what I was doing, but it just wasn't fulfilling to me. I felt like I was helping wealthy people manage their money. And at the end of the day, how is that really helping change the world? So one day I was living in the city at the time, and I was in the subway, and there was an advertisement for the New York City Teaching Fellows Program. And I was like, what is this? And I don't know if there were even websites. I guess there was a website back then. And I looked into it and learned that it was a alternative certification program. They were looking for career changers. That's how they marketed it. And I was like, well, that's me. And it was a way to change my career where they would pay for your master's degree. It was through the AmeriCorps grant. And they would place you in a school. So it's kind of a win-win. Automatically have a job, and you're getting your master's paid for. So it was a way for me to not go poor, become poor again, and just quit my job and go back to school. It just wasn't an option for me at that time. And so I applied, and I think there were about 3,000 applicants that year. So it was very competitive. I don't remember the number of spots, but I remember them saying it's very competitive. And I got in. And I remember receiving my letter in the mail saying I was accepted, and I was thrilled because it was a way out of banking and a way to, I think, a calling when I look back now, because day one in the classroom, I was like, wow, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I believe the universe works
Yes.
in ways that, if you're putting your mind to something and you set intentions on what you want, things eventually work out.
Mm-hmm. But at that time, did you say you were living in New York City?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Around what time was that?
So I entered the Teaching Fellows in 2003.
Okay. And just curious, what did you think of New York City at that time with the environment?
I loved it. I mean, I was in my 20s. I moved in when I was 25, I think. It was great. The energy, the people. It's tough it's definitely especially now, it's a lot easier to live in Manhattan if you have money. But people in their 20s in the city, everybody's kind of struggling together. It was convenient for work, of course. It was a great way to meet people from all over the world. There's great cultural opportunities and experiences in the city that are a subway ride away. The museums and theater and music. It's just comedy. There's just so much to offer. My husband and I say we're going to retire in New York City, which is usually not what people retire, because it is a very cool vibe.
Yes, definitely. And so the switch to the classrooms, what were those early days like in the classroom teaching in Springfield Gardens? What surprised or inspired you most?
Well, one, the way that the fellows marketed was that they were putting teachers in, quote, hard-to-staff schools. So I got there and I was like, I'm in like a middle-class neighborhood. Why is this hard to staff? And I mean, all my students' parents were middle-class folks, cops and nurses and some teachers, and it was a Black neighborhood, mostly Caribbean families. So it makes you wonder, what did that mean, hard to staff school? But that was kind of surprising. And I think what I learned there, is like kids are kids. They're amazing. Like the relationships that I built with my students that first year, I still connect with a bunch of them. They're really the only class. They sought me out on social media. So I follow, they're all like in their 30s now, which makes me feel very old. But I just learned that all kids want the same things. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to feel like they belong. And the relationships that I built with those students, I cherish them, because I was brand new, nervous teacher. I had no idea what teaching was going to be like. And I always saw teachers as role models and really smart. And I don't know if I really saw myself as that yet then. So I was, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome going in. Like, am I going to be able to do this? Do I know enough? Am I smart enough? They're going to look to me to be the expert and the role model. But I learned probably more about myself and learned more from those students than I think maybe they learned from me. And it was wonderful from day one. Their personalities, and they were hilarious, and they were kind, and they're just great kids. And I loved it, and they helped me figure it out. I remember there were 2 kids that were really good at math. And even though I was in finance, I haven't taught multiplying fractions and I hadn't done it since I was in 5th grade. So I was like a day ahead of them in the curriculum. And there were a couple times where I made mistakes and they were like, nope, that's not right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. So it was awesome. It was a great, great first year. It couldn't have gone better.
And from then on, you knew you wanted to continue into teaching, and just after coming out of that first year, just figuring out if there were some challenges or hurdles, but making it through that time.
Yeah, I think the challenge is navigating. Really, it wasn't the kids, it was the adults. There was a very strong teachers union, and I wasn't used to that coming from the private sector, where I'd be working with kids during my lunch, or I'd be working after school, and they'd come in and be like, hey, get out of here. We don't do that here. It was very confusing to me. So I learned how to navigate that, where I just kind of stayed away. I didn't go into the teacher's lounge. I did my own thing. I didn't buy into that culture. And I think that's what good teachers do, because It's everywhere. I've experienced as an administrator too, where, do you know the book Horace's Compromise?
Yes.
It's basically like, you don't work too hard and I won't work too hard, you know? And it's like, that's not how I operate. So that was challenging to navigate, and it was very surprising to me because of the mindset and the outlook that I had on what a teacher is. And not to knock unions. You know, I'm not anti-union by any means. I think they're important. I think they're needed. But just like any profession, there's some bad apples.
Yes.
And, you know, I just had to learn to navigate that and not compromise my integrity and just do what I thought was right.
Yes. And then from there, you've held a variety of leadership roles since then, from principalship to district level work. How did each step shape your view and the opportunities that came from that?
When I was a teacher in Springfield Gardens, PS 15, the Jackie Robinson School, I got very involved with, I had 2 principals while I was there. My first principal, anything that he would ask teachers to get involved in, I would volunteer. You know, I just wanted to learn. I wanted to understand how schools work and continuously improve. And we had a good relationship, and then he retired. And then I had another principal. Same thing. I got very involved with him, and he partnered with an outside organization. This is when New York City was working with partnership organizations. The schools had the ability to partner with these different organizations, and one of them was called Replications. And Replications was part of the movement in New York to break up larger high schools into smaller academies. So that was a big part of their work, but they also would work with schools as partners to help them with whatever they needed help with. So my principal signed on with them. He brought me to a conference that they were holding to learn more about what they do. And I became the liaison between Replications and my school. So our big goal was implementing critical friends groups, which is like a professional learning community where we would look at our students' data and come together in a type of collegial circle to talk about how we can improve our instruction. And it was really interesting to me, and that was putting a toe into the administration world. And then I decided I wanted to get my admin certification, so I worked under my principal, and that requires you to do an internship with your principal. So then you're doing a lot of the admin work, basically the stuff that they don't really want to do.
Yes.
So they give you different projects, and so I earned my admin certification, and then that organization, Replications, tapped me to start a school with them. So we were starting that process, and during that process, they got involved in a project in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where there were 4 schools that were taken over by Louisiana State Board of Education, BASE, and they hired Replications to implement the academic program in these 4 schools. They were becoming charter schools. So the organization that held the charter hired Replications. Replications asked me if I wanted to be the person on the ground to help start these 4 schools. So it was 3 middle schools and high school. 3 middle schools in North Baton Rouge and a high school in Point Capee. So I did it. I went down, threw my dog in the car. It's just me. And it was the best work I've ever done. I mean, I never worked harder, I think. It was round the clock, because we basically had a summer to hire the principals, the teachers. I was starting from scratch, transportation, food service, everything. And then do the strategic plan and open the schools. And it was great work. I was there less than a year. The organization that held the charter and Replications didn't see eye to eye on some financial stuff. They asked me to stay on in Baton Rouge, but I had the opportunity to come back to New York and work with Replications, and my family's all here, so I came back. But that really gave me the itch to want to run my own school or principal or whatever that looked like. But I knew this is what I wanted to do, because the impact that you can have in the classroom is much broader when you're running a school, to set the vision, to do the goal setting and implement, a plan with a laser-like focus. Like, that gets me excited. It sounds geeky and dorky, but when you can see how initiatives change kids' lives and families' lives, I feel like I'm doing good work.
Yeah.
So I came back to New York, worked for replications with the schools they supported. I was basically the person, my title was Director of Instruction. I would go up to the principal, what do you need help with? So it could be anything from a master schedule to some sort of professional development. And that was awesome. It was just kind of spread thin. It was hard to see my impact. And that's when I started looking for roles in districts. And I ended up in the White Plains City School District as the English coordinator, K through 12. And in all of these roles, I guess I'm not answering your question. I'll get there. How did my view change? And I think that my view on what kids need never changed. I think I continuously learned what good schools need. I learned the impact that school culture has on a school. I learned that families really just want best for their kids, and that staff come to work every day saying that they want to do a good job. And that lens has really shaped how I operate with kids, with families, and with staff in it. I do this thing with my staff with staff. I don't like to say my staff.
With staff.
With staff. Because I really have a team approach.
Yes.
Called operating values. And it's something that I learned when I was working in a charter school in Brooklyn. I was a principal in Brooklyn after White Plains. And I can't take credit for it, but it's something that I've replicated and used in all the places that I've worked. And it's just 4 ways that we work together. And it kind of sets an expectation. And why I bring it up is because one of the things we talk about is assuming positive intent. Mm-hmm. And that if you can assume positive intent in all of your interactions with kids, with staff, with families, you're in a much better, there's more of a level playing field. And you're kind of taking away any emotions or feelings that you may have, preconceived notions, all of those things that can get in the way of progress or building relationships. And that's really what I feel like I've learned in all of my roles. It's so much. This is a human capital business. Mm-hmm. It's not when I work in finance with stock tickers and CUSIP numbers. And this is everything that I do there's human interaction to it. Mm-hmm. So is data important? Of course. Do we want our kids to achieve? And that includes numbers. And absolutely, that's number one. To get there, you need to remember that you're the human element. Mm-hmm. And always assume the best. Yes.
And before Greenport, were you at East Hampton?
Yeah.
School district?
Yeah. So after White Plains, I really wanted to be a principal. I really wanted to see the impact. So I was a K-12 coordinator in White Plains. So I ended up in Brooklyn. I was the principal of a charter school. Also amazing work. It was during the time when New York State was transitioning to the Common Core standards. So being a principal in a charter school really gives you curriculum chops because mm-hmm. there's a director of operations that deals with everything not related to instruction and teaching and learning. So I really was steeped very deeply in the standards, unpacking them, unit planning, lesson planning. We have lots of PD when you work in a charter school. Every Wednesday is a half day, so you're working with teachers every week. So that really was such great experience for me to learn what good teaching is and how to teach the standards. And then my husband and I were living in the city, and I was pregnant, and we both worked in schools in the city. He actually worked for Replications. That's how we met. And we realized that it's so hard to navigate schools in the city that we wanted to raise our child on Long Island. That's when I started looking for opportunities on Long Island. And not necessarily Long Island, but we wanted to raise our child. They go to school where you live, right? Instead of navigating the city school district where it's not always that way. So I ended up in the East Hampton School District. I was the principal of John M. Marshall Elementary School for 7 years. Amazing place. The school's a gem. Great people there, great families, great staff. And that was my first experience being a principal in a district school with a teachers union, because charter schools didn't have a union. And I had a lot to learn. I was coming in with my charter hat on, and it's a different world you have to navigate. Not good or bad, just different. And I had the opportunity there to do some great things. The staff and the community were very supportive. We started the pre-K program, so our enrollment was dropping, and it was a way to maintain our staff and bring a program that benefited our families. It was a full-day pre-K program. My daughter was part of that first cohort, so I had a personal vested interest in its success, and it's still thriving there. And then we had a very large Spanish-speaking population. We also started a dual language program. Again, that my daughter was in the initial cohort, and those students are now going into 6th grade. So it was a great experience, so fun to start a program like that. Challenging, but fun, and the impact that it has on the community is great. It's a way to bring families together. It's a way to bring a community together. And it improves outcomes. There's tons of research that supports kids that are bilingual, trilingual, have better outcomes academically, and have better outcomes financially in the job in the workforce. So it was a win-win.
Yes. And were you were there during COVID?
I was.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
That and some of the challenges in navigating that.
Wow. Could have never planned for that. So, yes, I was a principal there. My daughter was in kindergarten when we shut down. And that was just a crazy time. You know, we had to figure out how to do school online for little kids. And I think we did an okay job with the timeline that we had to make things happen. Mm-hmm. Could we have done better? Of course, you can always do better, but this was navigating something unprecedented. Mm-hmm. So we had online learning. We really tried to continue to connect with the community. We had this Reading Rockstar bracelet thing where if you read a certain amount of minutes, you got different colored bracelets. And mm-hmm. I would still go out into the community and deliver these bracelets, and we would video kids getting their bracelet, taking it out of their mailbox, and then we had a weekly video that went out. We did a bunch of those car parades. It was tricky, and it was hard for families. You know, my daughter was in kindergarten and was on meetings all day. My husband's a school administrator, and she was often sitting on her Kindle, like many kids, just trying to entertain themselves while their parents were working. So I saw firsthand what it was like for elementary students to be home. And luckily, my husband and I were home. There were a lot of families that had to go to work, first responders families. And my goal in September was to open school 5 days a week. Mm. And not everybody wanted that. There was a faction of the community and some staff, and even I could say, you know, I had to convince the board and the superintendent that I could do it. And that meant, I mean, I even offered to drive to Texas to get those shields that you had to put around the desk to,
wow.
you know, and we were in classrooms with the measuring tape, the 6 feet, and my assistant principal and I were determined to open the school, and we made it happen. And during that time is when I was interviewing in the South Country School District, and I interviewed in the summer and I just never heard anything. So I was like, okay, didn't work out. Then my focus was just opening school. And I'm so grateful because there's now research that shows that the kids that did go back full time are doing better than the kids that were in a remote or a hybrid model mm-hmm. at the elementary level. So I feel like I walked away doing the right thing for the kids of East Hampton. And then once school settled, All of a sudden, I got an email from the superintendent in South Country. Hey, you still interested? And I was like, what? I thought, I don't know what happened there, but sure, let's talk. And during that time, the first week of school, we have a COVID case. And if you Google me, you'll probably see the article. When I left, there was speculation that I was leaving because we had a COVID case, and we now know how ridiculous that is because of how many COVID cases
Yes.
there were in schools. But it was also new, and it had nothing to do with that. I was looking to move up, and this was an opportunity. So I ended up getting the assistant superintendent position in South Country, the curriculum, instruction, and accountability. And I started November 1st, and I remember pulling out of John Marshall. I was still a parent because I was still living there. My daughter was still going to the school. Feeling good that I left the school and better than I found it. Mm-hmm. And that's always my outlook. And that's what I hope to do in Greenport, too.
Yes. And could you tell us what attracted you to Greenport School District and the opportunity to come work here as the superintendent?
Yeah, so I applied to Greenport 4 years ago when there was an opening. I was not the successful candidate, and I was so happy to see when the opportunity came up again last year. What I love about Greenport, there's a long list. I think, number one, I love that it's a small community. Mm-hmm. It's easy to get disconnected from what's happening in the classroom when you're in a large district. There's so many things coming at you. And I often say, if I wanted to be a CEO, I would have just stayed in finance. Mm-hmm. I really don't want to lose that connection to kids and to families. So what a great opportunity. We're one building. When I walk out of my office, I'm in the cafeteria. Yes. Like, who gets that as a superintendent? So I have daily reminders all day long of why I'm there. Which is a gift. It's really a privilege to work in an environment like that. I've only worked in diverse communities, and that is something that attracts me. I think that is interesting work. I think it's challenging work, but it's the right work. And it's if you have to say you have a calling, I think that is my calling. So Greenport is very diverse in that way, and that's part of why I wanted to be here. I also just love the North Fork. I'm learning more about it being over here. I live on the South Fork. And it just offers unique opportunities that I want to build on. The connections that you can have with the community, with local organizations, CAST, library.
Yes.
The fire department was so welcoming to me. Put my name on their sign. Like it was just... It just feels very tight-knit, and that everybody just wants the best for their community, and that's what they're all striving for. And that is what I want too, that I really want Greenport schools to be a place where the kids can say, Greenport sent me, and they're proud of that. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of pride here, and I want that to grow and to continue, and I'm privileged to happen that opportunity to build on the great work that's already been done here.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And just getting started here, you've talked about doing a listening tour since taking the helm. What have you heard from students, teachers, and families that stuck out to you?
Yeah. Starting in March was a whirlwind, I have to say. I really wanted to leave South Country with things buttoned up as much as I could. And so I was, working to make sure that I left South Country in a good place while transitioning to Greenport. And it's a busy time, the end of the school year. The budget was in full swing, all the end of year activities. It's a lot. So I don't think I met with as many stakeholders yet as I'd like to, but any opportunity that I had to talk to people, I did. And it was mainly within the school. So we had a number of retirements this year. 6 teachers retired. So I did exit interviews with all of them. And that was really, really great. People were very honest. again, there's a lot of pride in Greenport and school and staff. And they shared with me things that are great. And I only had one question when I met with them. What are we doing well? What could we do better? Mm-hmm. And they all had positive things to say. And there was always challenges and things that we can do better. So that helped shape some of the goal setting that I did this year. Of course, the kids are amazing. I mean, the kids I just graduated, I already miss them. And there was a handful that I got to know well, and they are not shy about telling me what's going well, what's not, what we can do better. I think what I've learned is that communication is something that schools can always do better. And I took that to heart. We transitioned to a new communication platform called Parent Square. Most districts are using that now. And just letting people know, what's going on, why we're doing certain things. I think the why is what was missing in some of our communication. So being very transparent about why we're doing certain things and why we have to say no to certain things. Yeah, I think that was the big takeaway with the staff. Was instruction, of course, and academic excellence is something that is my job and that we have to strive towards. So we have a lot of offerings for kids, but building on that, ensuring that our elementary curriculum instruction is preparing kids for secondary. Those are some of the things I've heard and some of the goals that we have for this year and the coming years.
Yes. And you've also talked about the idea of the broken windows theory in schools.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you in the context of education, and why does it matter?
So the theory, I don't know if you're familiar with it, comes from criminology, and it suggests that when there's signs of disorder, like broken windows, graffiti, litter, things like that, that the rules don't matter, and that can encourage more misbehavior. So in the context of schools, it's funny, when I left Brooklyn, the PTA gave me a mug, and it said, sweat the small stuff. Miss Doyle says, sweat the small stuff. And it's something, and I forgot that I used to say that. You have little catchphrases that kind of went away. But it is how I operate, that small issues signal big expectations. So I think for us, it's addressing minor behaviors. We have a cell phone ban that the governor put in place that we'll be implementing in September. Our district purchased Yonder pouches, where kids will be putting their cell phone into a pouch or any internet-enabled device. So smartwatches, AirPods all go into that pouch. So addressing those things, if you don't, students perceive that the rules aren't enforced or they don't matter. Environment matters. So we just went through a huge construction project over the summer. We're replacing all the ceilings and the lights in the hallways. And when students come to a clean, well-maintained building, it communicates to them that we have high expectations. Disrepair can undermine student pride. And we want them, again, to feel proud of where they go to school because they internalize that. Consistency is also a key. So teachers and administrators addressing those small infractions consistently and respectfully helps to establish a culture where students know the expectations and they feel accountability. But it's not about discipline. It's about positive reinforcement and creating what I like to call a culture of care. Celebrating positive behavior, maintaining welcoming spaces, reinforcing norms. It helps have this positive effect. So in school, fixing broken windows, it means addressing the small issues, maintaining an environment where students feel expectations are clear, consistent, and tied to mutual respect. So if there's a graffiti in the bathroom, we're going to clean it immediately. If there's a broken window, we're going to fix it immediately. And Eric Daly's our facilities director. He really buys into this concept, which I am grateful for. Because again, we want our students to feel proud. Over the summer, we redid the locker rooms. They were in disrepair. And other schools come because we share sports teams with Mattituck and Southold. And we don't want people talking smack about our locker rooms and saying that, oh, Greenport. I'm aware that there's a bit of a narrative out there that we're not the best school. And my goal is to change that, to quiet those voices and really create a place where our kids feel very proud to be. And that requires some accountability for them and for the adults as well, and myself.
Yes, definitely. And how do you balance your finance background with your educational leadership? Do those financial skills still come into play?
Yeah, for sure. I know how to read a spreadsheet. So, the budgeting in schools is very different than any type of other budgeting, but I understand it. And there's a lot of rules and regulations that come with school budgets. So it's just really understanding those, and everything's in a code. So I think finance, just understanding how to use Excel and knowing how the numbers work helps me. There's not a big learning curve there. I think more importantly, what I took away from working in the private sector is the leadership piece, which comes really in handy as a school administrator. It's aligning resources with priorities. So I did that as an assistant superintendent. I had a budget, ensuring that the money meets the mission, I think is our goal. And that sometimes that means that there's tough decisions that we have to make. But as long as our goal is excellence in the classroom, we're okay. Creative problem solving is something that I had to do in the private sector. So, securing grants, forging partnerships to bring in resources beyond tax revenue is important. I think also managing a team is really important. So I was a team leader when I worked at Citi, and it was a diverse team, people from all different backgrounds. Learning how to tap into people's strengths and give them roles and responsibilities where they can shine, I think is the best way to manage a team. Again, a strengths-based approach to leadership for me has been the most successful way to operate.
And you also emphasize the idea of schools as community hubs. What role do you think Greenport School can or should play in the wider life of the village?
Greenport schools are really the heart of the village, literally.
Yes, it's right here.
You can't go through the village without passing the school. And it's a small community, so pretty much every family lives here is connected to the school in some way. So it's important that we serve as a hub, not just for learning, but bringing people together. So partnering with organizations like the library, like CAST, the Art Center. So we want to make sure the school reflects the community and strengthens the entire community. We have a slogan, and that was on the Greenport website before I got there: the best kids on earth learn here. So we really want the community to feel that the school is, providing a great experience for our kids, because a strong school builds a strong community.
And then also you've mentioned some challenges or what you've heard from some of the teachers or students, but just looking ahead, what are some of the biggest priorities or challenges you're focused on as you plan the coming years?
Yeah, so our goals for next year are strong academics, a positive school culture, preparing students for the world. Those are the big goals. We do have an improvement plan that we submit to New York State because we didn't meet certain benchmarks. And some folks may look upon that as a negative. You're on a list for not meeting certain benchmarks. For me, it's an opportunity to goal set, which I do anyway, in a way to rally the community behind shared goals. So on our first superintendent's conference day, I'll be sharing them with the staff. A committee put together these goals in the spring with our elementary principal, Mr. Tavares, and they're around supporting students. It's something called a MTSS, a multi-tiered system of support. That's our big goal at elementary. We're making sure we're intervening if kids are behind before it gets too late. So that's really the headline around MTSS. I have a goal around facilities. We have our 100-year-old building, and there's been a lot of amazing projects and upgrades to the building, but there's continuous work that we need to do, especially around our athletic complex. We just applied for the T-Mobile Friday Night Lights grant. I'm hoping that we are awarded that. It's super competitive, and it's all about your social media presence. So please follow me at Greenport Soup on Instagram, because the more shares that we get, the better opportunity we have of getting that grant. And basically that grant, it pays to redo your football field. So there's facilities goals, there's academic goals. I have a personal goal as superintendent. This summer I've worked on an organizational chart. I talked earlier about, making sure everybody's filling roles and responsibilities that match their strengths. When you're in a small district, everybody wears a lot of hats. I joke at the night I was appointed at the board meeting in Greenport, the gentleman that was running the sound, he also is our living environment teacher and a football coach. So everybody's doing a lot. So developing an organizational chart, making sure that we're meeting all the mandated roles that the New York State Education Department has for us, like the data protection officer and the DASA coordinator and the compliance officer, and seeing what that looks like and making sure that, the right folks are in the right spots and also in places where they want to be, because, happy staff, happy kids. So those are kind of the big goals. There's a lot of action steps underneath those, but goal setting is a way for us to stay focused, because there's a lot to do in schools, and it's a way to say no, or not yet, I should say, not no, but not yet, because we know that if you're trying to do everything at once, nothing gets done well. So I'll be rolling out those goals along with our operating values at our opening on Superintendent's Conference Day.
Yes. And I wanted to, because you brought it up before, the cell phone ban.
Yes.
I'm trying to think, even when I was in high school in 2005 and 2006, it seemed like that was a new thing that was being discussed, but was never really implemented where I was. But it seems like it's something that would be beneficial for schools. Was that something that you even had at the charter schools, or this is kind of the first time?
Yeah. I was in an elementary school. Kids didn't really have phones back then.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe a few of them did, but I didn't know about it. But so this is something that superintendents, principals have been talking about for a bunch of years now, especially post-pandemic. It's a problem. Kids are on their phones, are addicted to their phones, social media, so that it affects engagement in the classroom. It affects social interactions. Kids are not looking at each other in the eye and speaking with one another. They're on their AirPods. They're not engaging. So that's one downside. Also, social media is a huge distraction for school administrators, because there's a lot of issues between kids that arrive through Snapchat and other apps that end up becoming discipline issues within the school. So it's a way to minimize distractions through with the discipline side, but also in the classroom. It's a lot on teachers to manage devices. I can't even imagine having to do that as a teacher. It was not something I ever had to do. Again, I was an elementary teacher, but still, what you have to manage, and then to add the factor of having a kid addicted to their phone, it's tough. There's some schools of thought where we should be teaching kids personal responsibility, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's a parent thing to do. In school, this is not a calculator or a bicycle or, things that I had as a kid that I had to learn personal responsibility. Kids are actually addicted, and there's research that supports that. Like, they get dopamine hits every time they get a like on, an Instagram post. Like, there's real mental health stuff that's connected to this. So to ask teachers to manage something that kids are truly addicted to is not fair. So I do agree with the ban. I know it's unsettling for some parents because they want to be able to contact their kids, and I get that. But you call the school, will make sure that you can speak with your child if you need to speak with your child. And that's how it was done, before cell phones. So it'll be an adjustment, and we respect that change and that transition. Change is hard. But I have colleagues, and my husband works in a school district that's been using the Yonder pouch for a couple of years now, and they said that it's pretty much been a game changer, that kids are actually engaging with one another, they're talking to each other in the cafeteria, and that it's easier to engage them in the classroom without that distraction.
Yes, definitely. And then also, people have talked about the school districts across the North Fork, but it seems like Greenport has been pretty steady in terms of its population, whereas maybe Southold and Mattituck is kind of decreasing. But looking ahead, do you see that Greenport continuing to have a healthy student population?
I hope so. I do. And BOCES does an enrollment projection for us. I'm not sure when that comes out. But when I was doing my research for the superintendent position, that was something that I noticed, that it's been pretty stable, which is very helpful when you're trying to budget and when you're trying to engage in any capital improvement projects, because every child comes with per pupil amount. So given our demographic and the fact that we're in the village, and I foresee that it'll be pretty stable, but again, it's hard to predict the future. My goal is, as I said a few times, for people to want to come to Greenport, to choose to be here. So I feel that's my job, to make sure that folks want to stay.
Yes. And you've worked also in charter schools. Could you explain a little bit more about that and some of the differences between public schools?
Yeah, so I worked with charters in Louisiana, and then also I was a principal of one in Brooklyn. It's very different. You have a longer school year, number one, so you have more opportunities to engage with kids. You also have a more flexibility with the school day. So our kids had a longer school day. Our staff had a longer school day. So it was easier to implement initiatives around professional development for staff because you have a lot more time with them. There are some charter schools that have teachers' unions. The ones that I worked in did not. And so it was just like working in the private sector, the way you hired, and there was no tenure. There also, teachers were not in the retirement system, which was tough because the 3 years that I was at Empower Charter School is the name of the school, it was a revolving door of teachers because most of them were looking for that benefit, which I don't blame anyone for wanting to be able to have a retirement incentive. That's a huge benefit, which frankly I think is going to go away at some point. But so I felt like I was starting a new school every year because I had probably half the staff leave every year. So it was hard to sustain any programs when you're training new staff every year. So that was really part of the impetus for me leaving, besides I was starting a family. But I love the idea of families in New York City having a choice, because often their school that they were zoned for might not have been the best for their child. So I feel like that was something positive in the city. Now that I've been in a public school in Long Island for a while, I feel like my view might have changed a little bit. And probably as a superintendent, I don't want anyone leaving to go to a charter school because every school you want to keep your kids.
Yes.
But I don't begrudge anybody if they feel that this is a better environment for their child. But again, I want people to say, no, I want to stay in Greenport. That's the best place for my child.
Yes. And also, just I think one last question is just what gives you the most hope right now, whether it's in the students, the school community, or the future of public education as a whole?
In a word, the kids. They keep me on my toes. They keep me fresh. They want me to do better every day. So they are the hope. I really do want to foster that pride in them. And that takes a concerted effort on my part every single day, making hard decisions, having difficult conversations. I'm not here to be everybody's friend. I do lead with kindness. I think that you get the best out of people when you lead with kindness and you are not afraid to model vulnerability. So, and I feel like kids naturally have that.
Yes.
So remembering to be like them in that way is really important to continuously improve.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then I usually just ask at the end if there are any last minute things you'd like to say or discuss that we haven't touched on that you'd like to tell our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I am just so privileged and to be in this role, and I have so much gratitude. This is something that I've wanted Greenport for at least 4 years.
Yes.
For a long time, and I've been striving for it. And now that I have this opportunity, I don't take the position lightly. I think it is, I take it very seriously, even though I like to have fun and joke and laugh.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the most important job you can have is, you're shaping a child's potential future with how you lead. I read a book this summer. I think it's appropriate since we're in the library to talk about a book. It's called Into the Magic Shop by Dr. James Doty. And it has really been life-altering for me. It's something I'm going to share parts of it at my superintendent's address in September. He's a neurosurgeon, and there's a lot of parallels to his life and mine as a kid. He grew up poor, had not the best upbringing, and had a lot of feelings of not othering, not feeling like he belonged. And the stories, I'll try to keep it brief. He had this plastic thumb. He was really into magic, and he lost it. So he rode his bike at 12 years old and wandered upon this magic shop. And he walked in, and there was a woman there named Ruth. And Ruth changed his life. Ruth taught him, she saw him, first of all, for the first time. And he never felt like an adult ever looked him in the eye and had a conversation with him and really saw him. And she taught him what we now know as mindfulness practices, how to quiet his body, how to quiet his mind, and to set intentions and to manifest those intentions. Mm-hmm. And when he was 12, she had him write down 10 things that he wanted, and he achieved them in all his life. He became a neurosurgeon. It was a 12-year-old list, so he wanted $1 million, he wanted a Porsche, he wanted a Rolex. External things that validate you being seen, right? But as he grew as an adult and he went through a lot of hardships and he made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, what he learned is that he didn't recognize one piece of something that Ruth taught him, is that you have to open your heart. So you can set these intentions, you can manifest them, but if your heart isn't open, you may get these things for the wrong reason and use them in the wrong way. And one of the chapters is called The Alphabet of the Heart, and there's a mnemonic where it's CDEFGHIJKL, and each one is a letter. Mm-hmm. And it really resonated with me, not because I saw some parallels to my life as a kid and how I've learned as an educator that every child just wants to be seen, but also that's how I lead with that alphabet. And C is compassion, D is dignity, equanimity, forgiveness, C, D, E, F, G, H, humility, nice. I, integrity, J is justice, K is kindness, and L is love. And when I was going into the superintendent's interview, I didn't realize that those things are strengths. When you lead that way, that is not weakness, that is a strength. When you're able to open your heart, not only your mind, but your heart, to your students, to your staff, to your families, you're going to get the best from them because they're going to feel seen and heard, and it'll make your work more fulfilling. So that book really was like, it described the way that I operate, but also kind of put an exclamation point behind my leadership style that I didn't know was the thing.
Yes.
Or it was the right way. And it was just fascinating to me. And I was just, maybe it was the right time in my life to find that book, but it was life altering. And I endeavor each day to do that. And I'm human. I have bad days where I may not be as kind or compassionate or have humility, but having that mnemonic is a way to center yourself. And I have a mindfulness practice that I shared with our staff last year. And I took a risk, in being vulnerable and telling them that every morning I meditate and I journal and I say affirmations. And it really resonated with people. Like, a lot of people came up to me after that talk and were like, wow, thank you so much for sharing. And again, reminding me that I have to be authentic. Like, this is who I am. And when you can be an authentic leader and just be who you are and lead in the way that you think is right, you'll get people to rally behind you. And when you have people behind you willing to work with you, that's when you can achieve great things.
Yes, well, definitely. No, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on today and share your story and all the work you've done and continue to do and bring to the Greenport School District for our children. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 153 with Beth Doyle. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.